This conference will now be recorded.
Yeah, today onwards we'll start with what native HANA development. Okay, so when I say native HANA development, we are going to design what? HANA database. Okay, so designing HANA database means as part of every database, okay, as part of every database, we have something called as database objects. Okay, we have database objects. So related to HANA also, okay, uh, we have different database objects. Okay, just like if you take our normal ABAP, we have dictionary objects. If you go to SC11, we call them as what dictionary objects. They are also called as what database objects only. So here related to HANA, as an ABAP HANA consultant, we should know how to work with the schemas, okay, tables, schemas, tables. One second, just a minute. Yeah, okay. So schemas, tables, and then we have something called as database views. Then we have triggers, okay, triggers. Then we have sequences, okay, database views, triggers, sequences. Then we have synonyms, synonyms. What else? We have indexes. Then we have something called as database view, column views, column views. Then we have something procedures, okay. Then we have something called as what functions, function, okay. So all these together we call it as what database objects, okay. So we are going to design these database objects as part of what a SQL console, as part of SQL console. So if you take our ABAP, normal ABAP environment, if you want to create a database table, in every project we would be creating some tables. Right? So assume that I want to create a custom table in a normal ABAP. Will you connect directly to database? No, we don't have the provision to connect directly to the database. We will create the table through what application server. Okay, means we log on to application server from that SC11. We'll create the table. While creating the table, we'll provide different settings like technical settings, that is data class, size category, delivery class. Then we'll mention the fields and we'll mention the enhancement category. Okay, so through the application server, we are going to create the table. We'll be connecting to application server. We don't connect directly to the database server. Okay. In the application server, we'll activate so that a copy of that will be going and sitting in what database table. But whereas in case of this ANA context, we need to connect directly to what database. Okay. After connecting to database, after connecting to ANA database, we will be opening something called as what SQL console. So through this SQL console, we can create and manage this particular database objects. Okay. So in order to work with this particular what database objects, we use a standard language called as what SQL. Okay, SQL. Okay, we call it as standard query language or structured query language. So I can say SQL is a standard language to communicate with what databases. Okay, so as part of this HANA database also we use what a SQL. Okay, so first what I'll do is we will see how to connect it to the HANA database. So it's something like this. Since we are doing what native HANA development, we need to connect it to what HANA database. One second. Yeah, we need to connect it to what HANA database. How do you connect? Through what HANA Studio. I cannot connect to HANA database through SAP GUI. Okay, here if you see the diagram, I need to connect directly to what? HANA database. If you are connecting to SAP GUI, we can connect to what? Application server. But here we need to create the database objects directly. So Let me open the HANA Studio. So yesterday I told you HANA Studio is a client tool. Okay. So just like SAP GUI, we will be installing this HANA Studio in every system. Through that HANA Studio, we will do the database design. So I'm just double clicking on the HANA Studio. This HANA Studio is a Eclipse tool. In that Eclipse tool, we need to install what HANA related plugins. So once we install that HANA related plugins, SAP has renamed that as what HANA Studio. Basically, it is an Eclipse tool. Okay. So what I'll do now is let me go to what uh, development perspective. So as I told you, in HANA Studio we have different perspective. Each perspective will have a different look and feel. So since I want to do the HANA development, native HANA development, I need to get into a development perspective. As of now, we are in which perspective? ABAP perspective. On the title bar, you can see we have what ABAP perspective. So let me change the perspective. Okay, so on the what this standard toolbar only, and the right hand corner you can see we have different icons here. Okay, this is what modeler, this is development. So let me just click on this HANA development perspective. So I got into a development perspective. Okay, so in this you can see, one second please, one second. Yeah, okay, so I'm in the development perspective. So go to what this particular systems tab, right? So let me connect to what HANA database. Okay, you have to be in systems tab. I'll connect to the HANA database. I'll just right click on this. I'll say log on. Yeah, these are my database user credentials. What is the username here? HANA. Let me give the password. Done. Okay, so it is connected to what HANA database. Done. Now what I need to do? I need to what design the database means I need to open the SQL console. If you know Oracle, those who know SQL, PLSQL, in case of Oracle also, we'll directly connect to the Oracle, open the instance of SQL console. As part of that SQL prompt, we are going to issue execute what different commands. Similarly, here also, I have connected to what HANA database through HANA Studio. Now I need to open the SQL console. Okay, so how do I open the SQL console here? See, we have something called as catalog, content, provisioning, security. We'll understand all these things. So I'm in the catalog now, catalog folder, right? Yeah, I can right click on this catalog folder and you can see here we have open SQL console. Okay, it will open with the SQL console. So let me open that. Right, so I opened the SQL console. So you can see here when I open the SQL console, this SQL console is opened on behalf of which schema here? HANA schema. You can see here HDB in the parentheses we have what HANA. Let me expand this catalog. Okay, so if I expand this catalog here, one second. You can see I have logged into which user, HANA username. When I logged into, when I'm providing the credentials, username was shown as what? HANA. So on behalf of every logged in user, on behalf of every logged in user, you will have one default schema with the same name. Suppose assume that my user ID is XYZ, for example. Okay. So the schema name also will be what? XYZ. If my username is ABC, okay, the schema name also will be what? ABC. So here also in this context also, okay, in this context also, what is the user I logged in? HANA user. So for that logged in user, there is a default schema available. What is schema? Just leave it for the time being. You can understand that a schema is a container of what? database objects, just like we have package. If you take our ABAP context, we have package. No? If you want to do any development while developing the object, we'll save our object inside a package. So similar to that, you understand schema also is what? It's a logical container of what? Database objects. Okay, a default schema will be created on behalf of what? Logged in user with the same name. With the same name. Okay. Now let me just scroll down. 1 second. Yeah, you can see at the bottom, I'm in which folder here? I'm under what? Catalog folder. If I expand this, if you scroll down now here, there are some schemas starting with what? Underscore sys. Underscore sys. These are all called as what? System schemas. Okay. So here and there we'll be using these schemas also. When to use what? We'll understand that going forward. Just ignore it. But any schema starting with underscore sys, you understand that as what? A system schema. Okay. So as of now, we don't know how to create our own schema. Okay. What happened here? I logged into HANA user. On behalf of that user, one default schema will be available called as what? HANA itself. Okay. And I open the SQL console. How to open the SQL console? We need to right click on the catalog folder and say open SQL console. So right hand side you can see SQL console is open. SQL console is open on behalf of which schema here? HANA schema. Okay. So now what I'll do is just try to understand. I want to create the table. Okay, I want to create the table. 1 second, I'm on the mic issue, just hold on. Yeah. So when I right clicked on this catalog, I opened the SQL console. Okay, it has opened the SQL console for which schema here? For which schema? Anna. I don't want that. I want to create, okay, I want to create my own schema. Okay, so do we have this schema with the name Gensoft? Gensoft HANA is there. Okay. What I'll do is I'll try to create one more schema. How do you create other schema? See this. In the SQL console only, we have a SQL statement called as create. Okay, try to understand. Create schema. Why I'm creating the schema? Because I want to create this database objects. I listed some database objects now. All these database objects I want to store in my own schema. I want to store in my own schema. That is the reason I'm creating my what? Schema. How do you create? In the SQL console, we have to use a statement called what? Create schema, right? And we have to give a schema name. It is always recommended, it is always recommended to specify the object names in what? Double quotes. It is not mandatory, but the recommendation is it is recommended to enclose the database objects in double quotes. So I'll say in double quotes. Let me give the schema name as something Gensoft SQL. Okay, Gensoft SQL done. Yeah, create schema Gensoft SQL done, done, done. Okay. Right. So I want to execute this. Okay, this is a statement used for what? Creating the schema. Create schema gens of SQL. How do we execute here? You can see right hand side. We have one button what? Execute. F8. Just like how do we execute our ABAP objects? F8. Here also I'll be using this particular execute icon, execute button. So let me click on this. This statement will be executed. Actually, when I click on this, what happens is it will execute all the statements in my SQL console. Okay. As of now, I'm having only one statement, so it doesn't matter even if you don't select. But generally, your SQL console might contain what? Many statements. Okay. Without selecting the statements, if you try to click on this execute button, it will execute all the statements in the what? SQL console. So that's why it is better even if you have one statement. Good practice is you select that statement, select that block of statement, and then click on this particular execute button. So I'm trying to create what? Our own schema. Just like we create our own package, Here I'm creating my own schema. So when I execute, you can see at the bottom. At the bottom, you can see it is given the message what statement so on successfully executed in 29 milliseconds, whatever it is. Okay, so schema got created. Okay, schema got created. Can I see that schema here? Let me open. I'll choose catalog. Okay, I can right click on the catalog. I can say refresh. Okay, let me say refresh. Do we have any schema with the name Gens of SQL? Yes. Let me open this, expand this schema. When I expand, you can see here, you have different database objects here. You have different database objects. Let me expand tables. When I expand tables, I don't have any tables. So what we did so far, just I created an empty schema. As part of this schema, I don't have any objects at this stage. So now what I want is, I want to create a database table. Okay, so in a normal ABAP, we create it through what ABAP dictionary, it is SC11. So here I want to create a table. Just try to understand. What is the table basically? A table is a collection of what fields? Table is a collection of rows and columns. So I want to create the table and I want to insert some data into the table. Okay, so see the technique here. So in this HANA database, we can create two types of database tables. Row store table and a column store table. A row store table and column store table. Okay, so we don't know what is the difference between row store table and column store table. We'll understand that going forward. So just I want to create a simple table like employee, and that employee table should contain what some fields like employee ID and what employee name. So let me create the table. So what I'll do is I'll create the table now. Create table. Create table. I'll give the table name as something what EMP1 for example. So this is not a good practice. Whenever we are creating any database objects, it is recommended, it is recommended to qualify the database object with the corresponding schema. To qualify the database object with the corresponding schema. Okay, for example, I'll do one thing here. I'm creating the table. Let me give the table name as XYZ. Try to understand. I'm giving the table name as XYZ. Done. Then as part of this table, I need to create what? Some columns. So just to increase the readability, I'm doing it in the next line. Okay, so done. I'll provide some columns. Even the column names also good practices. You enclose it in what double quotes. EMP ID. I'll give the data type is what integer. Just like we say data EMP ID type I. Here the data type is what INT. Then I'll say ename. I will use a data type called as varchar. You understand this varchar is similar to what character data type. Varchar of what 20. Done. Let me close the table creation. Okay. So I'm just trying to create the table. Okay. Before this table, it is always recommended to qualify your object name with the schema name. Okay. So I need to instruct to which schema this particular database object belongs. Okay, what is the database object? A table. What is that table name I give? XYZ. But I have not mentioned any what schema name. Let me try to execute this. Let's see whether I'll get any syntax errors. What is the practice? You select that block of statement and just click on what? Execute button. Okay, when I click on this, that you can see the table got created. The table got created. Let me quickly right click on the catalog and say refresh. What is the schema I created before creating this table? Gens of SQL. Na? So let me open my schema Gens of SQL. Under this, we have what tables. Okay, if I expand this, yeah, you can see I don't have any table. Okay, I created the table and I got the message that table is successfully created. But it is not showing the table in the particular schema Gens of SQL. I'll do one thing. Just now I told, on behalf of every logged in user, on behalf of every logged in user, a default schema will be available. What is the logged in user in this case? Anna. I logged into which user? Anna. So let me go for a schema with the name what Anna. If I expand this, if I expand. Under tables, okay, we have many tables here. Let me just quickly scroll down. You can see at the bottom what happened. A table is available with the name what? XYZ, with the name XYZ. So what is the meaning? What is the understanding? If you don't prefix, if you don't qualify, we call it as prefix or qualify. If you don't qualify your database object with the name of the schema, that object gets created on behalf of what? Logged in user schema. So it is available under what? ANA schema. Under table, we have XYZ. Let me open the definition. Right click on that. Acha, one more thing. I have created this table, but I have not instructed whether it is a row store table or whether it is a column store table. So let me try to open the definition. Right click on this. I'll say open definition. Right click on the object. I mean, it is a table. Say open definition. And you can see this is the table XYZ with schema, ANA schema. These are the two columns. Okay, you can see right hand corner what is the type it is showing. Row store. So what is the understanding? If you don't mention whether it is row store or column store, by default it is creating it as what? A row store. Again, please forget about what is row store table, column store table. It is not required at this context. By default it is what? Row store table. Done. Okay, so what is my requirement? I don't want to create the table inside what? Logged in user schema. I want to create in my own schema. So what I'll do here, just observe, create table. I'll prefix my what? Database object with my own schema. What is my schema name? Gens of SQL. Okay, gens of SQL dot. Let me give a meaningful name. I'll give it as EMP1. So I'm trying to recreate the table EMP1 as part of which schema? Gens of SQL. Let me execute this. I'll select this. I'll press F8. I'll press F8. Done. The table is created. Okay. So if I go to the Gens of SQL schema under tables, it is not showing me. I'll just right click on this. I'll say refresh. I'll refresh. You can see now it has shown the table EMP1. If I open the definition of this table, right click on the table, say open definition. Done. Yeah. Okay. These are the two columns, EMP ID and what? EMP name. What type of table it is? Row store table. Now quickly what I'll do is, let me create one more table, EMP2, EMP2, but I want to create this table as what? Column store table. So what you have to do? You have to use the statement what? Create column table. Create column table. I gave the schema name and I mentioned the table name. Done. So you can see the syntax here. I have to separate the fields with a comma. The last field we should not give any comma. Okay. So this varchar of 20 is similar to what? Character of 20. Varchar is a one of the data type in SQL language. So let me try to execute F8. Table got created. If I refresh, I can press F5 also for refresh. So this is a table EMP2. If I open the definition, I can see the table got created. What is the type here? Column store. Okay, so the understanding is if you don't mention the type of the table, by default it will create it as row store table. If you want to create a column store table, explicitly we need to give what? The keyword what? Column. Okay, so any questions, please ask me so far.
Uh, so this Hari Rajapalan.
Yeah, yeah, good.
This default, I know the schema HANA is the Lagan username or always it is HANA.
No, no, in this my server it is Anna. In my server, the username is Anna. Okay, that's why
Okay,
the schema name is also Anna. Okay, suppose in your what, in case you are working in a project, okay,
okay,
on your username might be something Raj. Okay, so what
Okay.
happens? You have one default schema with your name. That is Raj,
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
right?
So
Hmm.
suppose in case, so in this SQL editor, I have the first line should be create schema. So I'm, my by
No,
mistake.
no, no. It's not compulsory that the first line should be create schema. Just I gave a
No, no.
what?
Yeah. My
Tell me, tell me.
question is, my
Hmm.
question is, so by without selecting the statements I'm executing now, all gets executed.
Correct.
So if I recreate this schema, will all the objects goes off or will
No,
retain the
okay.
object?
I understood your point. What you are saying is you don't want to select the what statements directly. You want to execute, so you want to
Yeah.
check what happens, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So far we have created one schema. We have created one table XYZ in ANA schema. Okay, and two tables in our own schema, gens of SQL. Okay. Let me create one more table. Just observe this. Okay, I'm creating one more table. Create column table, gens of SQL.emp3. I want to do a small change. Okay, what is the change is? Just like if you take our ABAP context, acha, this is one more important point. In your ABAP environment, if you want to create any custom table, every table should have minimum one primary key. Na? So compulsory you have to create what? One primary key. So like that we have some constraints like primary key constraint, foreign key constraint. Similarly, in SQL also, I can impose constraints on my database table. So what I'll do is for this EMP ID, I'll give a constraint called as not null constraint. So what is that not null? Ignore. But I'm imposing one constraint called as not null. Okay. So I'm trying to create one more column table called as EMP3, which has got what? Two columns EMP ID and E name. Okay. And EMP ID is what? Not null. Now before executing this, let me go back to this EMP2. Observe here. If I go to EMP2, this is my definition. EMP ID and EMP name. You can see here, we have a column called as key. We have a column called as not null. Okay, nothing is selected so far here. Nothing is selected. Key and not null is not there. Okay. Now I'll try to execute this. So earlier, what we used to do, we used to select this and we used to execute. Now I'll not select that. I will not select. Let's see what happens. I'll just click on what execute button. Without selecting any block of statement, I'm trying to what execute. When I execute, okay, so try to understand when I execute this, done. Okay, so I got some errors here. Okay, so what is that error here? Create schema so and so. What is happening? What is the default behavior? It will try to execute all the statements in the SQL console. So what happened? It is saying that cannot use duplicate schema name, cannot use duplicate table name, cannot use duplicate table name EMP1, cannot use duplicate table name EMP2, and at the last, just now we create a table of EMP2. So is it clear, Raj? What happens is it will try to execute all the statements. We cannot have two database objects with the same name. So it will not create that because they are already created. So it will not overwrite, it will not replace, it will not allow us to create.
Yes, sir. Clear.
Yeah? So that's why, as a practice, better you select your statements and then execute so that you can guarantee that only the selected statements will be executed.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yes, Lakshmi, we'll see how to move the objects from one schema to another schema. We'll see. Okay, this native HANA development will go for what, 15 hours or more than that also. We'll be discussing that. So don't worry, we'll see how to do it.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Uh,
Sir Dinesh
I
here. Sir Dinesh here.
Dinesh, tell me.
Sir, we are creating a table. So, is there any restriction like ABAP we have created with Z custom tables? Here we are creating without Z.
No, am I creating Z here? No, no. So not no restriction.
No
No
restrictions.
restriction. See
And one more. Yeah.
in ABAP, we create that objects through application server. Na? So you must start all your custom objects with the Z or Y, that is Z objects. Okay, but here this database object, whatever I'm creating, we are directly connecting to the another database we are creating. So I need not follow any standards, not required.
Okay, sir. Sir, one more thing. We are creating the table. After creating table, we are selecting and executing. Okay.
Correct?
After
Correct?
executing, we are putting F8. We are executing. Then it is success or not? How can we know, sir? At the down, we are getting rows affected 0.
Yes.
Any errors? How can we identify?
It will give errors. See, this is also an error only in red color.
Ha ha.
Okay, what is saying here cannot use duplicate table name. So if any
Okay.
syntax error are there in the statement, you will get
Okay.
that syntax error also. We need to analyze that syntax error and we need to re-execute.
Okay. And here this varchar data type is there, sir. It is equal to
Mhm.
stringa. Stringa.
Yes,
This
yes, you
var.
can assume. Yes, collection
Okay.
of characters is like a
Okay.
string only, na? More than one
Okay.
character is a string only.
Okay. Okay. And this one, sir, creating the table, we are giving once in the first table we are creating with only one EMP, and then next with Gensoft SQL EMP1, EMP2, we are convincing with double quotes. So we are prefixing with Gensoft SQL like that, or only single one, all things.
Your question is, you are prefixing the table name with the schema name. Okay. So
Okay.
the practice is all the database objects, not only table. Going forward, we'll be seeing other database objects. Whenever you are creating any database object, it is recommended to qualify to prefix your database object with the schema name, and it is also recommended to enclose the schema name in double quotes and the object name also in what double quotes.
Yes, sir. Sir, is there any syntaxes for this creating like this?
Acha, where to get this syntax? Huh? Yeah, yeah, we'll see,
Ah,
we'll see. We are only
okay.
in the first session. Okay, we'll see.
Thank you, sir.
Let me take other questions once. Yeah,
Sir,
others any
sir,
questions?
yeah, I have one question, sir. Sir,
Yeah.
that schema that it's like um, TR that where we are saving our custom creation so that it can be transport to some other server. So is that like any transport?
I understand. So what you are trying to say is, in our normal ABAP, we store all our objects in a package, in a transportable package, so that they are assigned to the TR and so that we can transport. No, here schema means it is a partition in your database. It is a partition in your database. Okay, database will contain what many schemas. Okay, so in which area of the database, you want to store your database object. So I want to store in my own partition, nothing but what schema. So you can assume that schema is like a partition in the database. It is not related to transportation. Transportation, again, there is a different story. We need to discuss something called as delivery unit. Then we have to go to ABAP. There is a different thing again. That also we'll see going forward. So it is nowhere related to transportation. Schema is only what a partition in your database. Just like you can compare like this in our normal ABAP, when you're creating the table in the technical settings, you will give the data class and size category. Okay, so we have different data classes: APPL0, APPL1, APPL2, something like that. APPL0, I believe, indicates master schema. APPL1 is transaction schema. So why we have to choose? We need to instruct SAP whether you want to store your table, whether you want to represent your table as a master table or transaction table. If I choose APPL0, your table will go and sit in what master schema. Means all the master tables will go and sit in master schema. All the transaction tables will go and sit in what transaction schema. In case of master schema, you will have more read operations. In case of transaction tables, you will have more read and write operations. Okay, so we are physically separating in which area of the table you want to store this particular database object. This is nowhere related to transportation.
Okay.
Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Sir, is there any performance linked to that schema? I mean, for that kind of partition?
No, not no performance. Just we are where we are controlling the physical area of the database. There is no performance. Okay. If you don't
Okay.
mention the schema, what happens? Your object will go and sit in the default schema. Default schema means on behalf of every logged in user, a default schema would be available. It will go and sit there. That's all. No performance.
Okay.
The others, any other doubts? Yes, Akshay, coming to your doubt, uh, every time do we create the table in database only or also at application level? As of now, in native HANA development, we'll be creating the database table directly in the database. Okay. Going forward, we have a concept called as CDS views. Okay. We in that case we'll be creating them through application server also. So my answer is both. We'll be creating in the database directly. We'll be creating through application server also. So application server again that will come when we go to CDS views. Yes, Srilakshmi answered your query. May I know who is this MSK logged in by name MSK? Uh, may I know who is this logged in by name MSK? Hello? Yeah, is it MSK? May I know who is this? Is it Sri Lakshmi, other Sri Lakshmi, whom I spoke to you yesterday? Hello? Yeah, may I know who is this? Hello?
Hello. What
Yeah,
happened?
is it Sri Lakshmi?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, yes, I spoke to you, right? Okay, fine, fine. Yeah, so what is your query? One second.
Is it
Yeah,
tables?
yeah, not data. Yeah,
Yeah.
correct. In our normal, whatever we are doing so far, we are using what non-HANA database, non-HANA database. So to improve the performance of the applications, we'll convince our customers to go for what HANA database. So when the customer migrates their business to HANA database, what are the changes we have to do from ABAP perspective? That we are going to discuss as part of this particular course, ABAP HANA. Yes, it's a replacement of the database. If you go to HANA
Okay.
database, what are the
What,
changes you have?
what, okay. What about function modules and views, structures, what we call in database?
Yeah, those things will be available.
Long.
Those things will be available, but the major thing would be the changes in the reports. Okay, so when you develop any reports in a traditional ABAP, we will get the data into the internal table, we'll process it, and then we'll display the data to the user. Okay, so that is called as what data to code approach. We are getting the data from database to application server internal table, then we are doing the processing. Here when you go to HANA database, you need to push your code. What are the business logic we write, that code should get executed in what HANA database, so that we can make use of the features of HANA database, which will drastically improve the performance of your application. So the major change will be in the reports. Scripts, smart forms, module program, those things would remain same.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sir, I have a question.
Sir,
So,
this
Sudhanshu,
is
you
Rajagopal.
have that? Yeah.
yeah, so like instead of using like SQL scripting to create a table, so is there any option like we can create a table like that in ABAP, however, creating table the transaction code SE11. So is there
Yeah.
any option?
No, we don't have. In case of HANA database, if you want to create the table, you have to connect to the database and connect. Yes, from SC level also we can create, but if you want to get stored in the HANA database, there is something called as serious views. Okay, serious views. And one more thing is simple understanding. If you create it through SC level, it will always be created as what row store table. It will always be created as row store table. We don't have the mechanism to create the table as what column store table. one of the feature of HANA database is what? Column store tables. If the data is stored in column store format, the performance will be improved. That is the reason we are creating the table directly in the HANA database itself, so that we have the provision to specify whether it is row store or column store. If I create it in SC level, yes, I can create. But again, it is a traditional normal way of creating the table. It is always created as row store only. But I want column store. That is the reason we'll create the table in our database itself.
Sir, this is Rajgopal.
Yeah, I tell you.
Yeah, actually, we have so many, database objects.
Correct?
So, as a technical consultant, we decide what should be created and what
Yes.
should be the suitable one. Who decides what to be?
The development team has to decide. Means the ABAPers only should decide. ABAP and our consultants only should decide. It's simple understanding. See, if you again go back and compare with our normal traditional ABAP, we'll create the table and we have the option to what implement the events at table level in the table maintenance. In the table maintenance, we'll define and implement the events, right? Who will
Yeah,
decide that? Developers only na. Okay,
yeah,
my functional consultant will say that whenever I'm inserting a row in the table, I have to do some check. So to implement that check condition, you must go for what implementing the events only na. The functional consultant doesn't know how
okay,
to implement it. You will say is requirement. The developer's responsibility is to identify how to implement that. Okay, so here also all these database objects whichever is required in a project should be decided by the development team only.
okay,
Okay.
okay, sir. Yeah,
Sudhanshu, is your doubt is clear? If you create from SC level, it is always created as row store.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the reason to leverage the benefits of this HANA database. We are creating the table through from database itself, so that we can create it as what column table. Okay, done. So what is the change we have done now? While creating this table, I created this column as what not null. So let me try to open the definition here. What is that? Refresh. Right click on this tables and say refresh or press F5. Done. EMP3. Now if I open the definition, yeah, EMP ID, EMP name, you can see here in the not null column, X is selected here, which indicates what? This is a not null column. So let me try to understand what is the meaning of this not null. Right. So far we understood how to create row store table or what column store table. That. Now what I'll do is I want to insert the data into this table. Okay, inside the table what EMP3. So how do I insert? In SQL, we have one DML statement. Actually, just to give a better idea, I told that SQL is a standard language for communicating with the database. No? So this SQL we can further classify into different sub languages. So DDL, what DML, what else? TCL, and DCL. Okay, so if you take DDL, data definition language, we have some statements like create, alter, drop, and even truncate also will come under that. Create, alter, drop, and what truncate. If you take DML, we have insert, data manipulation language, insert, delete, and what update. Okay, and we have TCL, transaction control language, commit and what rollback. No, not DCL. DRL, data retrieval language, but people say select also will come under this category only. Okay, but we are not, select is only for reading the data. So I better indicate that as what. What is this? DRL, data retrieval language, that is what select statement. Okay, so as of now we have created the table by using create statement. Now I want to insert the data into this table. So what is that? We have to use DML statement. One of the DML statement is what? Insert. Okay, so let me try to insert here. So I'll say insert into, try to understand, insert into. See, these statements I can give it in lowercase or uppercase, doesn't matter. But I feel what uppercase would be better, but I can give it in lowercase also. But as I practice in this way, insert into. In which table you want to insert? EMP3. EMP3. Achha, one more thing. Actually, I thought someone will ask me this doubt, but no one has asked here. Every time I am prefixing my object name, every time I am prefixing the object name with the schema name, I don't want that. Here also, what I have to do, insert into gens of SQL, dot. Okay, what is the table name? EMP3. I'll come back to that. Then I'll say values. How many columns are there in my table? Two columns, EMP ID and what? EMP name. So I'll give EMP ID as one. Okay, I'll give the employee name. Let me give it as something, Raju, something. Okay, so here also in the insert statement also, I'm prefixing my database object with what? Schema name. I don't want that, but for the timing, let me insert. I'll say F8. I'm selecting that. I'll press F8. Yeah, below you can see insert into so and so is successfully executed. Now this is a table. How do you see the content? I can right click on this. I'll say what? Open content. Open content. If I click on this, you can see internally when I'm trying to open the content, internally it has executed what? Select statement to show me the data. What is the data here? One and what? Raju. Okay. So let me insert few more records. But every time I don't want to prefix with the schema name. So what I'll do here, I'll try to say set schema. Set schema. Earlier to create the schema, I used what? Create schema. Now I'm using what? Set schema. Set schema. What is the schema name? Our schema name gens of SQL. Gens of SQL. So what I'm trying to show here is for this particular SQL session, just like we have sessions in our normal SAP also, here also this is a SQL session. For this SQL session, I am setting the schema of gens of SQL. So let me try to execute F8. So what is the advantage of setting the schema? Once you set the schema for that particular session, I need not prefix my object name with the schema name. It will be what? Created as part of the schema which is set. Now what I'll do, let me insert some more records. Here I'll remove the schema name because already I've set the schema. Let's see whether it will apply or not. Already we are executed, no? Done. Already we executed. Let me give some data here. Okay, I'll give something 2, 3, and 4. Okay, I'll say something Raju 2, Raju 3, Raju 4. So I'm trying to insert some records. I'm not prefixing my table name with the schema name. So let's see whether it will be created or not. So when I say fit, done, right? It has executed. Okay, duration of the three statements is what? 4 milliseconds. I've selected that statement. I've executed that. Now, if you go back and see the table content, already I opened that now. So let me check it in the right hand corner. Okay, this is the table. I'll refresh on the somewhere at the right hand side. We have F5 refresh button. I'll refresh. Yeah, what happened? The 4 records got inserted. So what is the meaning here? You need not prefix the object name every time with the schema name. For the entire session, you can set the schema, and when you are referring to any object, that object will be referred as part of the schema which is configured, which is set. Okay. Now I'll try to insert one more record. Insert into EMP3 only values. I'll just say 5. I'll say 5. Done. So what I'm doing here, EMP3 is having how many columns, how many fields? 2 fields, EMP ID and EMP name. But I'm maintaining only one value. let's see let's see what happens. So when I execute this, when I say F8, good. So I got an error here. Could not execute. What is saying here? Not enough values. Not enough values. Get clear? Okay. My requirement is I don't want to maintain the data for employee name. As of now, I want to maintain the data only for what? Employee number. So if I directly give like this, it is unable to understand for which column it has to take the value. So if you want that thing, what you can do is I'll say insert into so and so. Okay, EMP3 in the parenthesis, for which column you want to maintain EMP ID. Na? Here also as a practice, I'll give EMP ID. Even if you don't give double quotes, not a problem, but better we prefix with what? Double quotes. We enclose it in what? Double quotes. Done. Understood? So if you want to insert the data for the specific columns, you mention that column name. So let me execute this. I'll say fetch. Done. Successfully executed. If you go and check the table, if I refresh, yes, I got 5 and what? Null value. 5 and what? Null value. I am able to insert null value for what? Employee name. Okay. Now what I'll do? Let me insert one more record. I want to maintain the data only for what? Employee name. So I'll say insert into EMP3. What is that column name? E name. I'll say value. I'll say something what? Raju 6. So earlier, when I'm maintaining the value only for EMP ID, it is allowing me. For employee name, it is inserted null value, blank value. Now, I'm trying to maintain the data for employee name. What is the value I'm trying to maintain? Raju 6. But if you see the definition of the table, while creating the table EMP ID, I gave that as what? Not null. I gave the EMP ID as what? Not null. Okay. So let me try to execute this statement. When I say fit, I got an error. Cannot insert null or update to null for which column? EMP ID. Understood? According to the definition of the table, EMP ID is not null. Not null means we cannot insert null values, blank values. That's why it is giving me this particular error. Not null means compulsorily we have to maintain the value. It can be duplicate value, but we have to maintain the value. Suppose when it's a duplicate, already we have 3 now. Already we have 3. Let me try to insert 3 now once again. EMP3 values 3. Just to differentiate, I'll give the name as 33. But the employee ID is what? 3. Right? So when I execute this, it is successfully inserted. If you go and check the table, if I refresh, I got what? 3. Okay, so not null means it can have duplicate value but cannot have blank value, means null value. Hope it's clear to everyone. Any questions so far?
Sir, this one, when you are opening the data in content, that is the row,
Okay.
the question mark appears for null value. From
Correct.
our
Yes.
ABAP, syntactically we need to check question mark or blank.
I didn't get your. Can you repeat that?
No,
ABAP in the sense.
by seeing this, question mark is inserted for the row EMPID 5.
Employee
Suppose
name. Okay.
suppose I'm referring from my the coding to this custom table. Null value is a question mark or a blank empty string.
Blank, empty string.
So question mark is just for display.
Just for display purpose. Doesn't have any significance. Question mark indicates it's a null value. That's all.
Okay. So.
In case of our ABAP environment, in case if you don't maintain the data for the columns, what happens is it will provide you the default values. For numeric data type, you'll get zeros, and for character data types, you'll get space. But here we don't have any default value concept. It will represent that null value as what? Question mark. Question mark indicates what? Null value. Sorry, someone is asking a question.
Sir, how to define key fields in the table that we are doing in the ABAP?
I'll come to that. Okay. Yeah, now let me quickly create one more table. And every time I need not create the new table. I can go to this table, I can do the alter, because at this stage we don't know how to use alter statement. I'm not getting into that. But let me create a new table. Create column table. Chunks of SQL, let me get as EMP4. Earlier I gave the EMP ID as what? Not null. Not null means it cannot duplicate value but cannot be kept blank. That is the understanding. Now I'll say empid int. We have another constraint called as primary key constraint. Okay, in a SQL we call it as constraints: primary key constraint, foreign key constraint, unique constraint, not null constraint, check constraint, blah blah blah. Okay, done. So I'm trying to create a new table. Let me execute this. I'll say fetch. The table is created. Okay, so primary key constraint is a combination of a unique constraint and a not null constraint. I repeat, primary key constraint is a combination of unique constraint and not null constraint. Unique constraint means it ensures that no duplicate values can be maintained. Not null constraint means we cannot insert null values. So I created this table. Let me close other sessions. So did I executed this? Yeah, already executed. The table is created. So if I refresh, left hand side, if I refresh, yes, EMP4 is available. So if I open the definition, right click and open the definition, you can see here. Good. For EMP ID, you can see key is selected. X and what is this here? So it's a combination of what? Not null and what? Unique constraint. Let me try to insert the data quickly. Insert into what is this? EMP4. EMP4, EMP4, sorry, EMP4, EMP4. Okay, I'm maintaining some data here. Okay, so when I execute, when I say fetch, what happened? The records got inserted. So let me open the content. I'll right click on the table. I'll say open content. Then I got the data 234 Raju 2 Raju 3 Raju 4. Now what I'll do is I'll try to insert into EMP4 values 4. I'll see something 44. Employee ID marked as what? Primary key constraint. Means it's a combination of unique and not null. Unique means what? It ensures that no duplicate values can be maintained. I'm trying to insert duplicate value. So when I try to execute this, when I say F8, done. I got an error. Insert into EMP4 values unique constraint violated. Just now I told primary key is equal to unique constraint plus not null constraint. So I'm unable to insert duplicate value. Now I'll do one thing. I'll say insert into EMP4. I want to maintain only employee name. So in the parenthesis, I'll give the column name, employee name values. I'll give the employee name as what? Value 5. I'm trying to maintain the data only for employee name. I'm not inserting the data for employee number, but employee number is marked as a primary key, which is a combination of unique plus not null. So when I execute this, when I say fetch, but what I got earlier, cannot insert null or update to what? Null. So understanding is primary key constraint is a combination of unique constraint and not null constraint. So it is not allowing me to insert duplicate values. It is not allowing me to insert null values. Is it clear to everyone? Like this, and one more thing. Like this, I can maintain any number of what primary keys. And one more important point in our ABAP context, I believe primary key fields should be at the beginning of the table. Primary key fields should be at the beginning of the table. But here, the primary key fields can be anywhere. It's not compulsory that it should be at the beginning, but the general recommendation is key fields will always maintain at the beginning, but is not mandatory here. Yes, anyhow, I'm done with the session. Before I wind up, as I told you earlier on Tuesday only, this week I'll take only 3 classes because I'm leaving out of session today evening. Okay, next ABAP HANA session will be on what? Monday. Okay, will be again on what? Monday, same time around 6 a.m. Today we got late, but it's officially 6 a.m. only. Okay, we had some internet issue, so next ABAP session will be on Monday 6 a.m. I'll share that vendor details also. You can contact them and you can request for what server access. You can try it for 1 or 2 days. If you're okay with that, then you can make the payment for them. They'll charge around 1,000 to 1,200 per month. I'll provide that vendor details to everyone by end of today. I'll drop a mail. which contains the vendor detail. So next session will be on what? Monday. Okay, so those who want to leave, they can leave. Others, if any questions, please ask me.
Sir, Dinesh here.
Yeah, Dinesh.
Hello. Sir, can we comment this one anywhere like control is done here? Any point of commenting line?
Yeah, we'll see. We can comment. Why
Sir,
to
how
comment
can
first of all?
we
Why to comment first of all?
see in the 53 line? One is question mark. We are getting output. So how to in ABAP we comment no generally. How we comment here? I want to ask that.
That is code. That is in the ABAP code. You'll give star at the beginning of the line. Okay,
Yes,
and
yes,
you'll get
yes.
a comment. Okay, here, if you don't want to execute that, don't select that. That is the answer. No? Okay, you
Okay,
can select a particular and execute that only. So even if there is any mistake here, it will not be executed. That's why make an habit to select. Whichever you want to execute, select that only.
okay. Sir, how can we
Hmm.
identify here any standard table and normal table, the custom
Yeah,
table?
yeah, I told you now, this is my own schema. Okay, right? So there are predefined schemas starting with what? Sysna, right? So if you go to this schema, let me open some schema. Don't worry about this. If I go to the tables, is it showing me this what? What tables? So these are all
Yes.
the standard schemas. They're all the standard schemas, which are starting with underscore sys.
Okay.
Okay. We will never use the standard schemas for creating our own objects, but we'll refer to these schemas. We'll refer to these schemas going forward. Why we have to refer, we'll understand that later. Okay, that's
Okay.
the reason. Whenever you are creating the custom objects, you create that in your custom schema. That is the reason I created the schema.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Yeah, others, any other doubts? Next week onwards, we'll add from Monday to Friday. So next session will be again on Monday. I'll share this recording by afternoon or by evening. You can practice that. Any other questions, please ask me.
Do we have secondary indexes like ABAP for this
We
particular
are, we are.
table creation?
Going forward,
Mhm.
see, here we have indexes, no?
Yeah.
We'll be discussing. Yes, we have indexes.
Okay. Fine.
Okay, but we call it as different. We have something called as binary tree indexes. We have CPP index. The concept is different here. So when we come to that, we'll see. Okay,
Okay.
generally we
Fine.
create indexes to arrange the data in order. So here also the purpose is same, but the indexes names are different and the way they work is different. Okay.
Okay. Fine.
Yeah, Srilakshmi, in the next session I'll show you that. Okay, how to copy the columns from. What you are saying is you want to create a table from an existing table. That's what you are
Yes.
saying.
Yes, sir.
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Okay, we have to use a combination of create and select. While
Okay.
creating the table only, in the
Mhm.
parentheses, I have to say select from existing table so that the columns and the data will be copied. You may
Okay.
require only the fields, not the data. So we have
Yes.
the options like with the data, with no data. So we'll be seeing
Okay.
all this.
Okay.
Any other doubts, others? Done. So again, we'll meet for this ABAP on our session on Monday. I'll try to share this recording by end of today. And this things also, what are I'm going to discuss in SQL console, everything also I'll send it through notes, and I'll try to maintain comments wherever required. Okay, so refer to that notes and analyze that, then start practicing. Shall I then? So we'll meet again on Monday at 6 a.m.
Sure. Thank you. Bye, Shiva.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.